Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, and members of the media. Welcome to this public meeting number 16 of today, Monday, 16th of May, 2022. I would like to give a special welcome to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Artwell Arian, and his support staff. We've established a quorum of 8 members. Please let's stand for a moment of silence. We have received notice of absence from MP William Marlin, MP Sarah Westcott Williams, and MP Rayon Peterson. Is there any member of Parliament that wishes to have the floor for notifications? MP Angelique Ramu, you have the floor.
Pleasant good morning to you, Madam Chair Lady. Pleasant good morning to my colleagues, to the Honorable Minister and his support staff here this morning, and of course to the viewing and listening public. This morning, Madam Chair Lady, I would like to extend condolences to the family of the late Bashar Salman Molero, who was a young student of the Milton Peters College in his CXC year, who suddenly passed due to heart failure. They're having a memorial service, I believe, as we speak at the school for this student. And as a parent, my heart goes out to his father and, of course, to his classmates, his teachers, who are all of course, mourning his loss. We know that any death is one that we all take to heart, but having to lose a child at such a young age is very detrimental. So once again, I would like to extend my sincere condolences to the family, friends, classmates, and of course the teachers who are mourning his loss. I thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Ramu. Is there any other member of Parliament that wishes to have the floor? I see there's no need. Then we go over to the agenda points for this public meeting. The agenda point 1 is incoming documents. We have as agenda point 2, the National Ordinance amending the Income Tax Ordinance, Wage Tax Ordinance, Profit Tax Ordinance, Room Tax Ordinance, Car Rental Tax Ordinance, Motor Vehicle Tax Ordinance, and Transfer Tax Ordinance. This can be found under IS 443, Parliamentary Year 2021-2022, dated January 12, 2022. Also under Parliamentary Year 2021 to 2022, number 155. Agenda point 3, we have the ratifications of the decision list of the Interparliamentary Kingdom Consultation, IPCO, held on May 4th to the 6th of 2022 on St. Martin. This can also be found under IS 868, Parliamentary Year 2021-2022, dated May 9th, 2022. We go over to agenda point 1, the incoming documents. All members have received a list of the incoming documents and the proposal for further handling. As stated before, it can be found under IS 689. And I would like to ask the Member of Parliament if there's any comments to the incoming documents. And whom should I give the floor? 689 until 854. Is there any Member of Parliament that have any comments regarding the incoming documents? I see no one has signed into the speakers list. And if there is no comments, then the list and the proposal for handling are approved. We then go over to agenda point 2, the National Ordinance amending the Income Tax Ordinance, Wage Tax Ordinance, Profit Tax Ordinance, Room Tax Ordinance, Car Rental Tax Ordinance, Motor Vehicle Tax Ordinance, and Transfer Tax Ordinance in connection with the establishment of an office of the World Bank in St. Martin, which was received on January 12, 2022 by Parliament. A Central Committee meeting was held on February 17, 2002, with a continuation on March 4, 2022. February 17, 2022, with a continuation on March 4, 2022, on the subject matter in which the Member of Parliament posed their questions and the ministers answered these questions. A report has been made on the deliberations of the Central Committee meeting and was sent to the government and can be found on the P drive of Parliament. The government answered this report, the so-called Nota van Aanleiding van het Verslag, and it can be found under IS 891, Parliamentary Year 2022, dated May 16, 2022. A copy of the draft national ordinance and the Nota naar aanleiding van het Verslag can be found on the P drive of Parliament. It is important to note that in accordance with Article 99 of the Constitutional Draft National Ordinance concerning taxes, it must also be approved by an absolute majority of votes cast by the serving members. The elucidation to this article states that owing to the great interest of the fiscal regulations, an extra parliamentary support base is desirable. With 15 serving members, this amounts to 8 votes. I would like to take a adjournment because to allow the minister the opportunity to put his presentation on the screen. I will take a 5-minute adjournment. Is that okay? Yes? Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. 5 minutes good? Welcome back, members of parliament. We just took a brief adjournment to allow the minister, his staff, some time to put the presentation on our screens, but unfortunately, we had no luck. We had a little technical difficulty there, so in the interim then, the presentation has been then shared with members of parliament, and with that then, I would like to give the Minister of Finance the floor for any opening remarks and the presentation. Minister, Arian.
Good morning to the honorable members of parliament, the people of St. Martin, support staff. I'm also having a little technical difficulty here with my laptop. Honorable members of parliament. Oh, yes. Yes, that helps a lot. It is for me a great honor to present to you today an overview of the changes to several tax laws in relation to correct omission regarding to tax exemption for consular buildings to implement measures to combat double tax evasion for temporary short-term activities on the island, to enable the establishment of pre-clearance on St. Martin, and to enable the establishment of offices of international organizations such as the World Bank office on St. Martin. The first point pertains to a correction of omission regarding a tax exemption for consular buildings. For consular posts headed by a professional consul, officer, and other members. Pursuant to Article 32 of the Vienna Convention, subject to exceptions, consular buildings and the official residence of the head of consular post, if he is a professional officer of which the sending state or a person acting on behalf of the sending state owns or is the tenant or are exempt from all national, regional, or municipal taxes and duties, unless it concerns taxes and duties levied for the provision of special services. With regard to the tax system of St. Martin, this treaty provision means that acquisitions by the sending state of consular buildings and the official residence of the head of the consular post must be exempt from transfer tax. However, this exemption has not yet been introduced in the tax regulation. In the present draft, it is proposed to correct this omission. For the honorary consuls, in accordance with Article 60 of the Vienna Convention, the exemption from tax on consular premises also applies to the consular premises of a consular post headed by an honorary consular officer of which the sending state is the owner or tenant. As the consular buildings of a consular post headed by a professional consular officer, this is an exemption from the transfer tax. However, this exemption has not yet been introduced in our tax regulation. For the avoidance of doubt, it is noted that this is not an exemption from transfer tax for the acquisition of residences of honorary consuls. The second point pertains to the double taxation in the case of temporary short-term work with St. Martin. With this draft legislation, we are introducing some measures for the avoidance of double taxation for the short-term temporary work. In the past, hurricanes wreaked havoc in St. Martin, for example, Louis and Irma. This can very well happen again in the future, and temporary work will have to be carried out here in the context of reconstruction in St. Martin. Foreign companies, foreign entrepreneurs, and employees who perform temporary short-term work in St. Martin in the context of reconstruction and in the connection with projects that are for the account of the Netherlands, Curaçao, or Aruba due to mutual aid may be confronted with double taxation that may arise in this respect. Such double taxation can make it more difficult to attract the necessary foreign expertise and can make reconstruction or the aforementioned projects more expensive if foreign companies or consultants increase their price as a result. Furthermore, it is highly desirable to make St. Martin attractive for the so-called digital nomads. A digital nomad is someone who travels around the world and can earn money along the way, thanks to digital means. Digital nomads have location-independent work that allows them to earn money regardless of location. Typically, a digital nomad needs nothing more than a laptop and internet connection to do his or her job. Digital nomads are entrepreneurs, freelancers, or employees who work remotely, remote workers, for example, and who can do their work anywhere in the world without having to stay in one place or any one fixed place. The avoidance of double taxation internationally, the responsibility of home and source country of the business or employee. This is largely regulated by tax treaties for the avoidance of double taxation. St. Martin has a very limited amount of double taxation treaties. Because of this and the Nomads project, it is desirable to avoid double taxation unilaterally. This is proposed to take place by including a provision in the Wage, Income, and Profit Tax Ordinance whereby St. Martin unilaterally withdraws if the activities in St. Martin do not exceed certain international customary thresholds. For the above-mentioned internationally customary thresholds, broadly speaking, the OECD Model Convention and the UN Model Convention and the conventions or regulations for the prevention of double tax with which St. Martin is a partner forms a basis. The third point enables the establishment of customs pre-inspection personnel in St. Martin. As a result of negotiations held by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to revisit the text regarding immunities and privileges stemming out of the pre-clearance agreement between the government of the U.S. and the Kingdom of the Netherlands for St. Martin, it is proposed to introduce implementation legislation for foreign government and their officers. Paragraph 1 of the text proposed by the U.S. provides the CPB officers enjoy the same privilege and immunities as those accorded to the diplomatic representatives under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, or the same privileges and immunities as those accorded to the consular officers under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. The entire Kingdom of the Netherlands is a party to the latter multilateral treaty. St. Martin intends, following Aruba, to grant tax privileges exemptions to CPB officials and for CPB buildings pursuant to the Vienna Convention. In concrete terms, this concerns exemptions for the following taxpayers: tax types: wage tax, income tax, profit tax, transfer tax, and motor vehicle tax. These privileges exemptions can only be realized through legislative changes. This is the reason for the present proposal. In the proposed exemptions provisions, reference will be made to a foreign government or officials thereof, foreign governments or foreign powers or parts thereof, a foreign power or official thereof, and not specifically to just the U.S. or the CPB. The concrete exemptions will apply to foreign governments, powers, or parts thereof, and their officials designated by ministerial regulation. For the time being, those regulations will only designate the U.S. for preclearance activities after the preclearance agreement has been signed. But this offers a possibility if at a later stage another foreign government or power concludes bilateral preclearance agreements with the Kingdom of the Netherlands for the benefit of St. Martin. This can also be designated by ministerial regulation. The fourth point enables the establishment of offices of international organizations such as the World Bank office in St. Martin. As we all know, AMER destroyed St. Martin on September 6, 2017. The Netherlands earmarked 550 million euros for the reconstruction of the island. A large part of these monies is being managed by the World Bank. For this, a trust fund was established. The World Bank group organizations, in particular, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the International Finance Corporation, intend to open an official office in St. Martin with the purpose of facilitating projects being funded by the trust fund. This office will support St. Martin and in particular the National Recovery Program Bureau with the preparation, the execution, and the evaluation of the trust fund projects. To enable the World Bank to establish an office on St. Martin, a so-called whole state agreement has to be signed between the government of St. Martin, the Kingdom of the Netherlands for St. Martin, and the IBRD and IFC. This HSA will regulate the proper execution of the activities, including the status, privileges, and immunities of the offices and the personnel. The draft HSA is based on 2 international agreements and a treaty, namely, 1, the Articles of the Agreement of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development of December 27, 1945, as amended effective 27th of June 2012. The Articles of Agreement of the International Finance Corporation of 11th of April 1955, as amended effective 27th of June 2012, and the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of Specialized Agencies with respect to the IBRD as of July 21st, 1949. The entire Kingdom of the Netherlands is party to the above agreement and the convention. Pursuant to this and Article 4 of the draft HSA with regard to the taxation, the World Bank, its assets and income, and its activities and transactions shall be exempt from all taxes and custom duties in accordance with the tax exemptions provided for in the IBRD and IFC agreement. Its officials should also enjoy exemptions from the salaries and emoluments paid to them by the World Bank, irrespective of their nationality or place of residence. In concrete terms, again, this concerns exemptions from the following tax resources: wage tax, income tax, accommodation tax, car rental tax, transfer tax, motor vehicle tax, and profit tax. It should be noted that no custom duties are levied in St. Martin, with the exception of a special import duty on petrol, which does not apply to the World Bank or its officials. With the exception of the wage tax exemption, the relevant tax exemptions resulting from the IBRD and IFC agreements and the convention have not yet been implemented in St. Martin tax legislation and or regulations. The only way to achieve these exemptions in an appropriate manner is therefore through the introduction of implementing legislation. Consequently, these exemptions now have to be incorporated into the tax system very shortly so that the HSA can be signed by the parties. This is a direct reason for the draft amending ordinance before us today. The proposed exemption provisions will refer to the international organizations and not specifically the World Bank. After all, similar provisions on tax exemptions are often included in treaties and other international organizations. St. Martin can also implement those international obligations with the proposed legislation if this is the necessary in the future. The term international organization refers in particular to intergovernmental organizations that are established on the basis of a treaty or agreement from which the relevant privileges arise and whose members are mainly sovereign countries or other intergovernmental organizations. Examples of such intergovernmental organizations are the United Nations and the NATO. The international organization shall be designated by ministerial regulation. For the time being, only the World Bank will be designated for these regulations. In the following sheets, the legislative changes will be explained. Obviously, we don't have the slides up, so I'll just run through the articles. Amendments of the National Ordinance on the Income Tax. Article 17, the reason for the proposed amendment to Article 17 are avoidance of double taxation for work in the short-term employment in St. Martin with regard to foreign employees. 2, with regard to foreign self-employment entrepreneurs. This provision ensures that if a foreign employee or foreign self-employed entrepreneur is present in St. Martin in the relevant period does not exceed 183 days, then only the home country may levy income tax on the work performed on St. Martin, provided that the other conditions stated in this provision are met. This 183-day arrangement is in accordance with international customary thresholds, the OECD Model Convention, the UN Model Convention, and the prevention of double taxation within St. Martin as a partner. An exception to the 183-day arrangement for employees not residing in St. Martin is introduced for the work performed for a subcontractor established on St. Martin. In these cases, subcontractor is regarded as a withholding agent, and the employee concerned is also liable for income tax for the remuneration received for the temporary short-term work performed on the island. Article 22. The reason to amend Article 22 is for the partial income tax exemption of consuls and other representatives of powers and of certain consular offices that are currently included in Article 22 and 23. To merge them into one article, now proposes Article 22. Article 23. The proposed Article 23, first paragraph, concerns the taxation of salaries of officials of international organizations designated by the Ministry of Finance in accordance with international custom and international agreements. These salaries are exempt from income tax in St. Martin. Pursuant to the proposed second paragraph, in cases to be determined by the Minister, the aforementioned exemption shall apply mutatis mutandis to officials of a foreign government for the salaries and other remuneration received from the government. Finally, the proposed third paragraph ensures that the officials of an international organization designated by the Minister of Finance who are recruited from abroad and who only reside in St. Martin for the performance of the work for the international organization and their living relatives, in principle, are taxed in the same way as non-residents in the income tax, except the fact that the international organization income tax is exempt. This applies mutatis mutandis to the official of a foreign government and their family members living with them who only reside in St. Martin for the performance of the work for the government. The National Ordinance on Wage Tax. The amendments of Article 4 of the National Ordinance on Wage Tax are related to the limitations of foreign tax liability in income tax for 1. Non-residents who perform temporary work on St. Martin. 2. Foreign contractors and foreign subcontractors. However, no substantive amendments are needed. 3. Foreign governments that are not regarded as withholding agents. With adjustment, it is achieved that the withholding obligation for wage tax is in line with the foreign tax liability in the income tax. National Ordinance on the Profit Tax. The proposed Article 1, 11 paragraph of the National Ordinance on Profit Tax is in line with the proposed Article 17, 5th paragraph of the National Ordinance on Income Tax. The proposed Article 1, 11 refers to foreign companies that perform temporary activities in St. Martin. St. Martin will then unilaterally withdraw from the taxation activities by means of employees or the other personnel in short term do not last longer than 183 days within any 12-month period. The proposed Article 1, 12 paragraph ensures that the activities of international organizations on St. Martin designated by the Minister of Finance cannot be included in the levy of profit tax in cases where international law requires such an exemption, or where such an exemption has been agreed in an agreement with a foreign power. Without such an explicit provision, discussions could arise about this in specific cases. Accommodation Tax Ordinance. The proposed new articles contains an exemption from accommodation tax for the rental of hotel rooms and the temporary rental of homes to an international organization designated by the Minister of Finance in cases where international law or agreements such as exemption pursuant to the article of the Minister of Finance may designate international organizations that qualify for this exemption from the accommodation tax due to the proposed establishment of an office in St. Martin. The World Bank will in any case be designated to such an international organization in the short term. This also implements the yet to be included agreement with the World Bank. And then we have the car rental tax ordinance. The proposed new Article 4A contains an exemption from the car rental tax for the rental of cars to an international organization designated by the Minister of Finance in cases where international law agreement such as an exemption. We have then the motor vehicle tax, where we amend Article 17. The proposed new Article 17D contains an exemption from motor vehicle tax for cars, motor vehicles kept by an international organization designated by the Minister of Finance. The proposed new Article 17E, in cases determined by the Minister of Finance, an exemption from motor vehicle tax will apply to cars that are kept by a foreign official or foreign power in cases where international law requires such an exemption. Article 18. With this amendment, Article 18, it is achieved that the procedure described there regarding the issue of number plates will also apply to said cars of an international organization and foreign power or its officials designated by the Minister of Finance. Transfer tax. In Article 1, the term minister is defined as Minister of Finance, as the former term is used hereinafter in this ordinance. Article 4, the proposed new Article 4 allows certain international organizations designated by the Minister of Finance to be exempt from the transfer tax that would otherwise be due on the acquisition of immovable properties or rights to which the subject in cases where international law agreement requires such an exemption. The proposed new Article 4, Part G, the acquisition of immovable property of rights to which it is subject to may be exempted from the transfer tax by a foreign power in cases to be determined by the Minister of Finance. This may concern, for example, cases in which the international law, again, requires such an exemption, for which such an exemption has been agreed to with a foreign power. And lastly, Article 25, the exemption from the transfer tax for certain acquisitions by international organizations and foreign powers designated by the Minister of Finance can be realized in two ways. The first method concerns the direct exemption, which means that no transfer tax has to be paid with regard to the acquisition, because the acquisition of the immovable property generally involves greater financial interest. This route is only open if the Inspector of Taxes, prior to the acquisition, has issued a written statement to that effect. However, in some cases, for example, in the case of quick purchase, it could occur that the inspector is not or cannot be requested to provide a statement in a timely manner prior to the acquisition of the immovable property, or that it's not possible for the inspector to provide a written statement in a timely manner to provide the acquisition of the immovable property. The tax will initially be due on the acquisition of the immovable property or the right, for example, via a notary. This tax can subsequently be reclaimed from the inspector pursuant to Article 25. The new Part D in Article 25, first paragraph, provides for this. The condition is, of course, that acquisition would have been eligible for an exemption if a prior declaration had been requested in a timely manner. Members of Parliament, we have come to the end of this presentation, and again, thank you for your attention and look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Minister Arian, for your presentation. We will now go on to the first round. I would like to remind the members of Parliament that the allotted speaking time in the first round is 20 minutes, and in the second round, 10 minutes. And according to the speakers list, the first speaker, we have MP Rolando Bryson. You have the floor. You would have to switch then with someone else.
One, two. Good now? 1, 2. Maybe a little more volume. Thank you. 1, 2. Yeah. Thank you, And good morning, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning to the Khifir, to my colleague members of Parliament, and to the Honorable Minister of Finance and his support team here today. I would just like to thank the Minister and the government for bringing this legislation that I think really exemplifies the importance of, if we want to be a country, here are the rules of the game. The merits of this legislation, when you go through it, it constantly refers back to different international treaties that St. Martin is party to, and obligations that we have when saying that we want to be a country. So since 2010, we have made and delivered to the people their request to be an autonomous country within the kingdom. And these are some of the things that we have to do, and I'm sure there are many more. So I think I would like to thank once again the government for bringing these pieces of legislation to us. Adhering to international law goes both ways. We want the Netherlands, Europe, and other international organizations to treat us in that international realm, and here's a step where St. Martin is also becoming such a player where we adhere to such international laws. However, Madam Chair, there are two parts of this legislation that does require some clarity that I didn't really quite get from within the Central Committee meeting, and hopefully we can get that clarity from the Minister today. The first part is with regards to the hotel sector, so the exemption that would be granted within the hotel sector or in the temporary, because if you look at the Logeergastenbelasting, it also talks about temporary rentals where Airbnb properties fall under. It also talks about the timeshare. The question that some stakeholders within the hotel industry would like to understand is how exactly what is the expectations from the hotel sector in granting such an exemption? Is it that somebody identifies themselves, or an organization identifies themselves as such an international organization and are automatically granted that, let's say, 5% discount? Or is there a procedure that they must follow by which the government formally informs the particular property or the entire hotel sector that this organization is going to be receiving such a discount? In some countries, Madam Chair, when we travel and you show your diplomatic passport, in the United States, for example, in Florida, hotels are accustomed, they automatically exempt you from the federal and state tax. But the official way to actually do it within the United States is that you're supposed to request the diplomatic exemption tax card, and then you actually present that at a hotel in order to get that discount. Will some sort of additional identification be used to present to these hotels when this, whether it's an IGO member or whoever will be using the properties? I think information for the hotel sector is still needed. I know that the Holland House and other hotels have housed World Bank employees, for example, many times. And also in terms of conferences, they tend to sometimes have meetings and conferences. How would that be affected by the change in the hotel tax and timeshare tax ordinance that will be brought by this law? The other question I had is with regards to the exemption on transfer tax. Can we just be informed which treaty does that stem from? If that information can be provided, that would be helpful so we can understand which law we are complying with when an international organization is able to buy immovable property but be exempted from such a tax. And that will be all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Bryson. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Christophe Emmanuel. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, good afternoon to you, my colleagues. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister and his support staff. Madam Chair, similar to my colleague that spoke before me, I am also happy that the government is here presenting this information, as much as I am against it, voting against it, and all of that comes with it. But there's a reason for that in particular, Madam Chair. Why? Because as I listen to the presentation, and I also want to sort of repeat some things that I heard my colleague before me said, seeing that we want to be a country and the things that, we have to do to become a country and follow these international laws and all these international rules and all of these conventions. Madam Chair, in the presentation of the Honorable Minister, I also heard him over and over spoke about conventions, spoke about international law, spoke about so many of those sort of things concerning the World Bank and concerning exemption, concerning taxes, and all those sort of things. Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister, are we here in St. Martin bound to conventions and international laws such as the Geneva Convention, ILO Convention, United Nations Convention, and law simply because we are part of the kingdom and Holland is signatory to those international laws and convention? I would like to know if St. Martin is simply bound to it because of being part of the kingdom. And I would also like to know, Madam Chair, which supersedes which. I would like to know if international law and conventions supersedes the local laws. And Madam Chair, I would also like to know if we are to adhere to rulings of ILO conventions, seeing that St. Martin is signatory towards them because of us being part of the kingdom. And I would also like to ask the Honorable Minister, are we here in St. Martin signatory to ILO Convention, United Nations Convention, on our own outside of the Netherlands? Madam Chair, the reason why I am going this route is because I would want to believe that the Honorable Minister is also aware, Madam Chair, of a ruling that came out from the ILO Convention to the unions of KLM. And if he's not, I would like to read it, Madam Chair, where it states, KLM unions send letter to Prime Minister Rutte after ILO statement. This should never happen again. And it says, Schiphol. All 7 KLM trade unions sent a joint letter to the Prime Minister Rutte on Friday following the ILO ruling on the employment conditions contribution of KLM staff in exchange for state aid. In the letter, Rutte, as representative of the Dutch state, is called upon to respect the right to collective bargaining. It goes on to say, with this letter, we as trade unions once again mark our position on the fundamental right of social partners to collective bargaining. We call on the state to respect these rights and never again to impose further conditions in the field of collective employment conditions for employees working at KLM or other companies, the letter reads. It goes on. The letter is a follow-up to the statement of the International Labour Organization, ILO, an organization within the United Nations that specializes in labor issues. The ILO recently ruled that the Dutch state has violated the freedom of negotiations of trade unions by not involving them in the negotiations on state aid to KLM. In exchange for state aid to KLM, the state demanded that working conditions of KLM staff be cut by up to 20%. The trade unions, namely FNC, VNC, VNV, VKP, CNV, NVLT, and the UNI are still furious that they had to sign by the cross and were unable to negotiate about this. They see the statement of the ILO as a confirmation that they are right. It goes on. The state should have consulted the trade unions about the conditions it had set for state aid. Read, the employment conditions contribution of KLM staff. The fact that this has not happened is contrary to international treaties. The state has only consulted with the KLM and has consistently kept the trade unions out of consultations, said Cabin Union VNC, which already announced on Thursday that it no longer felt bound by the agreements of the ILO ruling. Now, Madam Chair, with this being said, I heard the minister came in here talking about all sorts of conventions, but we have a 12.5% in this country, Madam Chair Lady, because of aid. Because of aid. That the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister walks in here and pass a law saying that we need these cut. I am asking the Honorable Minister of Finance, I am asking him, is it a violation and contravention to the ILO ruling of working conditions, Madam Chair Lady? Because most of the civil servants are part of a union. My time is up. Most of the civil servants are part of a union. No, it can't be off topic if the minister walk in here, Madam Chair Lady, and talk about international laws, talk about conventions, talk about all those sort of things. I am talking about international laws and conventions too as well. How am I off topic? How am I off topic? He mentioned international laws, the minister. He mentioned Geneva Conventions. How am I off topic when I'm making mention of the same thing? My question to the Honorable Minister, so based on the ruling, is the 12.5% and everything that comes with it, including the vacation pay and all those sort of things, is it a violation or a contravention of the ILO Convention, Madam Chair Lady? Because civil servants, teachers, they're all part of a union. They're all signatory to those conventions too, Madam Chair Lady. So I can understand the Honorable Minister of Finance walking in and talking about the United Nations and talking about the World Bank and talking about offices and cat rental and all those sort of things, that they should be exempt. That they should be exempt because of the taxes and all those sort of things, because we are bound by international law, because we are bound by Geneva Convention, because we are bound by all these sort of rulings, because we want to be a country. So how is it that those things are fine and well because we want to be a country, that we have to adhere to them, but when it comes to the 12.5%, we need to see what the State Secretary is going to say. They dispatch a letter to the State Secretary, but it's a violation also to Madam Chair Lady. That's what I'm asking. So I took serious offense when you tell me that I'm off topic, and it's the same thing that I'm talking about. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. I see that, oh yes, MP George Pantaflat, you're next on the speakers list.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, my colleagues in Parliament, Honourable Minister of Finance, Mr. Arthur Ilion, support staff, Mr. James and Mr. Shayadi, and of course those who are viewing and those who are listening by the available medium. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Minister for the presentation. This is, I would say, almost the second time because we have heard it. We had it discussed more in detail, I believe, in the presence of the Prime Minister, if I'm not mistaken. And we got some more clarity today as to why this has to take place. And indeed, Madam Chair, I join my colleague who spoke the first time when he talks about the issue of us wanting to be a country. There are certain rules and regulations, or treaties that we have to abide with. And Madam Chair, what is important for us to realize is that, and my colleague said it with regards to the issue of the ILO and those things and the 12.5% and how that we were able, government was able to pass the laws in order to have these things withheld. And what should be mentioned, though, Madam Chair, and again, I don't want to go off topic, is the fact that at present, as we speak, government is fighting very hard in order to restore that 12.5% and also restore the vacation pay. That should also be mentioned, and it should also be mentioned, Madam Chair, that what took place in 2020 was not a dance party, Madam Chair. It was a very, very vicious manner of the then State Secretary in order to get his way. And right now, we are on a better track with the new State Secretary. Let us work on that. Madam Chair, one of the things that I really would want to say. And we're talking about rentals and buildings and so on. And I think these persons, while they're here, they're going to have to eat and so on. And you know, and I think there'll be some financial input on St. Martin, I think, because I don't think they're going to bring in their food from abroad and so on, but they're going to do their purchases here. And Dutch bring their cheese, yes, but of course, I like Dutch cheese. But Madam Chair, in all seriousness, however, there has to be a balance. And unfortunately, yes, I see where, when it comes to taxes and so on, it's how it is in the real world. And if we are part of the real world, Madam Chair, then we will have to abide by these rules. All I want to see going forward, though, is that when it comes to us, with some of the treaties that is being applied, where we need support and defense on the international level, that those treaties also work on our behalf, especially as we're dealing right now with the United Nations and the matter of whether we are colonized or not. So, Madam Chair, just to get back on topic, I want to thank the Minister. And again, let's see how things go, how things advance in the future. And in closing, when you called me to speak, Madam Chair, I was looking at the Friendship Treaty, and I would have had a dialogue on that, but I'll leave it for another time because it's a treaty that's signed between the Netherlands and the U.S., but I don't see the benefits of St. Martin in that treaty. So I think if we're talking about treaties and we're part of the state, we should be treated equally when it comes to the Friendship Treaty. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Ponteflat. MP Ponteflat was the last speaker on the list for the first round. I would like to maybe take a brief adjournment to caucus with the minister. Should I? Yes? I'll take a 5-minute adjournment to a caucus with the minister to find out how long it'll take to respond to these questions. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Welcome back, members of parliament. I just had a brief discussion with the minister, and we have concluded that he would need some more time. So with that, members of parliament, then I will then adjourn agenda point 2, and then we can move directly then on to agenda point 3. Thank you, minister, for your presentation, and we will see you until further notice. I'm not mentioning the time. We don't know the time as yet. So I'll adjourn this agenda and then see you until you're ready to answer the questions. I then would like to go over to agenda point 3, which is the ratifications of the decision list of the Interparliamentary Kingdom Consultation, IPCO, which was held between May 4th to May 6th on 2022 on St. Martin IS 868 of Parliamentary Year 2021-2022, dated May 9th, 2022. The recently held Interparliamentary Kingdom Consultation, IPCO, was hosted by the Parliament of St. Martin at the Sonesta Maho Beach and Casino. It saw members of the Parliament from within the Kingdom coming together to discuss various topics, among which a technical briefing on the proposal of the Kingdom Law of the Caribbean Body for Reform and Development and discussion in 4 subgroups and a consensus Kingdom Law was discussed. And the consultation included a presentation by the Director of the Point Blanche House of Detention in the presence of the Minister of Justice regarding the prison system on St. Martin, and a briefing by the Director of the NRPB on recovery projects following the devastations by Hurricane Irma and Maria in September 2017, and then also by a briefing by NRPB included a presentation by the management of the PGIA and work visits to the St. Martin General Hospital and our landfill. The delegation expressed their appreciation for the organization of the IPCO by the Parliament of St. Martin and for the good, constructive, and open atmosphere in which the discussions of the sometimes complex points took place. The agreements made have been documented in the so-called afspraaklijst, the agreement list of IPCO. The intention of this agenda point is for Parliament to approve and ratify the contents of the agreement list of the IPCO. And once approved, the agreement list will then be sent to the government for their reaction. All members of Parliament receive a copy of this agreement list via email, and it can be found on the P drive of Parliament. This document is registered on incoming document number 868, Parliamentary Year 2021-2022, dated May 9th, 2022. Are there any comments on the list of the agreement as presented? And I see that MP Bryson would like to have the floor in the first round, and be reminded that the allotted speaking time is 20 minutes in the first round and 10 minutes in the second round. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all once again. I just want to take a moment to reiterate in our first public opportunity, this in a public meeting, to do so on behalf of our faction for what I think was a very successful IPCO in terms of the discussions that were had and the frankness that all of us were able to discuss within that setting. And of course, we know that the COHO took center stage at the IPCO. Regarding the decision list, of course, as the acting chair of the commission at the time, I had the opportunity to be part of the presidium meetings. I can say a lot of thought went into very specifically the wording in terms of the various positions and activities that took place. One thing I would like to request or propose, if this hasn't been done already, if a English translation of this decision list can be posted on the website. Has that been done? Once
approved, yes, we will.
Yes, okay. So just to make sure that it is also done in English, there's a lot of people within the community and are still, engaged with this cohort discussion. But then that again, maybe this, of course, it's not something for the chair lady or anyone here to deal with, but it's another call on the government. I think it was also specifically requested by MP Brownbill, MP Bishlani, and others. There is still lacking a sufficient information in English related to the cohort, the documentation, all of these things, we are still awaiting this information. We have a meeting this afternoon to discuss the cohort. I'm asking this now if maybe any information that have been put together in the English language, can we contact the Prime Minister between now and that meeting to see what has been done? Has the Dutch government done anything in that regard related to the translation in the English language? This is important, and that's why I'm highlighting that the decision list that we present, let's make sure we as Parliament do our part and provide it in English. But between the Dutch government and all the governments involved, most of our population speaks English, and we need to be able to have these documents provided to the public in English. So this is another call in that regard, and I know the Chair Lady formally as well as us informally needs to ask the government to get this information provided to the public. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Bryson. Yes, indeed, we sent a letter to the Prime Minister requesting that, but thus far, we haven't received any response on that matter.
No need, Madam Chair.
No need, Madam? No. Okay, MP Plantenflet was supposed to be next, but there's no need. Then, is there any other member of Parliament that wish to have the floor in the first round?
Just a clarification point.
Yes, MP Bryson.
To clarify that point, not just, let's say, the government of St. Martin, but the kingdom government, what is their role in also providing this within the kingdom? There are 3 common languages, constitutionally listed languages within the kingdom. Have they even provided in Papiamento for that matter? What is the kingdom doing to provide this legislation? Let's say the kingdom government doing to provide this legislation in English?
Thank you, MP Bryson. Then we have come then to the end of round 1 of this agenda point. I will then move over to round 2 and ask if MP Bryson would like to have the floor in round 2. MP Bryson? No need? Then we have come then to the end of the deliberations on the agreement list, and according to Article 57 of the Rules of Order, we now go over to the voting. We will now start with the voting on the agreement list of IPCO. Does any member request roll call? Hope to look at stemming? Roll call. Hope to look at stemming is requested by MP Emmanuel.
So what exactly is it?
The agreement list. Number is 12. Yes? I will now give the floor to our Secretary General for the voting.
Ludmila de Weaver.
4.
Akeem Arundel.
4.
Siddharth Bijlani. 4. Rolando Bryson.
4.
Chanel Brownbill. 4. Solange Duncan.
4.
Christophe Emmanuel.
Against?
Melissa Gums.
4.
George Pontiflet.
4.
Hyacinth Richardson.
4.
Angelique Rameau.
4.
Quisha Heiliger Martin.
4. The agreement list of IPCO has been accepted with 11 for and 1 against. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting, and I would like to, I would like to thank you all for your participation, and we will then adjourn this meeting for agenda point 2 until 2 p.m. We just found the time, so 2 p.m. we will have the Minister of Finance return for his answers for agenda point 2. So meeting adjourned until 2 p.m.